I bought this Bally Zip-A-Doo in 2014. It was made in 1970. As you can see, after 44 years, it was in need of some work. The playfield was worn down to bare wood in several places. The worst area was in front of the flippers, but there was also paint missing from around most of the inserts and around the pop bumpers. These had probably had non-stick Mylar rings around them. Dirt gets under the rings and acts like sandpaper each time the bumper fires and presses the ball into the playfield. It also looks like the machine had been exposed to strong sunlight, as the cabinet was very faded and a number of playfield plastics had also lost their colour. Notice this one here. Its background should be the plummy pink colour. It's totally faded away. These would have to be recreated as replacements are no longer available. The apron was also rusty and would need to be repainted and new decals made. Despite its poor cosmetic condition, the machine was in almost complete working order and had obviously only recently had new rubbers fitted. Nevertheless, major components like the flippers, pop bunkers and slingshots were all rebuilt and all metal coil sleeves replaced with new plastic ones. The playfield was completely stripped, cleaned and all damaged areas repainted. I'd had matching colours mixed by a local paint supplier for both the playfield and the cabinet. Here we see the repainted playfield almost ready to be sprayed with clear coat. Moving on to the cabinet. It was in poor condition. The original pink colour had faded almost completely to white. The plywood was also delaminated and flaking in many places. I soon realised that the cabinet artwork could not be preserved in its current form and decided that a complete repaint would be required. I know there are people who believe you should never repaint a pinball, but I'm not one of them. The original artwork was traced and a set of stencils made. Some were from tracing paper, but for other more detailed pieces, like the hands, stencils were made from sheet steel. It would be better to make all the stencils from sheet metal as the original manufacturers did, but that's a lot of work if you're only going to use them to paint one cabinet. The cabinet was stripped, any loose layers of laminate were removed and filled with automotive body filler, then filled and sanded and filled and sanded and filled and sanded. The cabinet was then sprayed in the original colours using the stencils. The aim of this method is to produce a final result as close as possible to the original. Here is the front of the cabinet with only the yellow and orange painted. Then the stencils are held in place by scrap metal as the tracing paper curls when in contact with the paint. Pink paint is applied, the stencils removed, and the front of the cabinet is complete. Finally, the whole cabinet was given a couple of coats of clear coat. The legs were cleaned and resprayed, as was the cabinet door. Here is the completed cabinet being reassembled. This was the first pinball I've completely restored, and I've not tried to make it collector's condition because I've restored it to play. There are a few things I've learnt along the way, and one or two things I'd do slightly differently next time. But overall, I'm very pleased with the results. The before and after shots show quite a difference. The damage around the playfield inserts, the sides of the cabinet, the coin door area had the worst of the cabinet damage. The flipper area and the apron were also worn. Before we see it in action, here are a few shots of the completed machine. So let's take a look at the rebuilt machine and have a quick game. You can be player 1, I'll be player 2. The playfield looks nice illuminated. I did try a few LEDs, but the results were too cold for my liking, so it's standard filament lamps throughout. I've now fitted a keyless lock to the coin door, so it no longer has that hole in it. I think the stenciling has turned out pretty well. There's always that worrying point of no return. Once you've made the stencils and start to sand down the original artwork, you know there's no going back. The back glass looks as though it's not original and has been recreated by someone in the past. But the quality's good, so I don't have any intention of replacing it. The playfield plastics have turned out well. Can you tell which ones I've created and which ones are the originals? Okay, let's have that game then. Let's player 1 and player 2. And you're up first. Good. Now let's see what I can do. You're winning so far. We're on the last ball already. This is my last chance to catch up. You won. Well done. Perhaps you can pop round and we'll have another game later. Well, that's it. That's the end of my 1970 Bally Zip-A-Doo restoration project. Thanks for watching.